On Saturday, the flower shop Forget-Me-Not came to life, as always. Customers crowded in, and the sellers diligently worked their magic, creating the most beautiful bouquets from fresh flowers for weddings and special events. Lillian, young and in love, joyfully set aside the most exquisite hydrangeas and pink peonies, carefully choosing wrapping paper that would accentuate their beauty. Involuntarily smiling, she confided to her colleague, "By the way, we'll soon be making bouquets for my wedding." James finally told his parents everything, and they agreed. "Yesterday, we even filed an application with the registry office." Kathleen sincerely congratulated her friend, saying, "Congratulations, may you be happy. Now you'll be joining such a wealthy family like cheese and butter. The Brooks Company is big and solid, their furniture sells like hotcakes." Lillian nodded, saying, "That's true, I didn't even believe everything would go so smoothly. I was afraid that James's mother would be against me, but fortunately, she agreed. Soon we'll be husband and wife. I'm so happy, I love James so much." Once again immersed in her work, she began to recall her life, her childhood, and her encounter with James. If someone had told her a year ago that she would marry a wealthy heir, she wouldn't have believed it. Lillian grew up in a small village where her mother, a Russian language teacher, taught classes at the local school. Her father was a disabled man, confined to a wheelchair since an accident that happened long before her birth. Her father had always been the way she remembered him, and she viewed him with love and care. With her mother's income and her father's disability pension, the family struggled to make ends meet, let alone afford expensive medications and regular hospital visits. They lived modestly, economizing on everything they could. Lillian was a cherished daughter, and her parents gave her all their love and attention. Her mother dedicated a lot of time to Lillian's education, inspiring her to read classical literature, teaching her good manners and proper speech, refining her handwriting and grammar skills. So, despite limited opportunities, Lillian grew up as a cultured, educated, and well-mannered young woman. On top of everything else, she was exceptionally beautiful. Lillian was a woman of short stature, but her figure was elegant, and her sweet cheeks featured dimples. Her long, chestnut hair, reaching almost down to her waist, added a special charm to her appearance. Even during her school years, many boys, childishly, showed interest in her, dreaming of being close to Lillian. However, she remained committed to her studies and family responsibilities, and her heart remained untouched as she diligently pursued her education and helped her parents with household chores. She found boys likable, but she couldn't find room in her heart for romantic feelings. Upon graduating from high school with honors, Lillian aspired to continue her education at the university. She understood that her family couldn't afford such expenses. Her mother worked hard to support the family and take care of her disabled father. At that moment, she decided to go to the capital, where she planned to work for a year to save money and eventually fulfill her long-standing dream of attending university. In her hometown, there were limited prospects for realizing her ambitions. Her parents reluctantly let their daughter go, and her mother couldn't hold back her tears, saying, "Lillian, my dear, you're our sunshine. How are you going to be in a foreign capital without acquaintances or family? I can't even imagine. Maybe it's better to stay here. We'll always support and help you." However, her father was on her side and supported her decision, saying, "You should go, my brave girl. You're smart, and there's no future for you here. Try your luck in the capital, maybe it'll work out for you. You'll find a job, for sure, and you'll do it. Just be cautious with boys, they can be tricky. And if you fall in love, bring your fiancé home. It's serious. Good luck, my little swallow." He hugged his daughter tightly at their parting, and throughout the train journey, Lillian's mixed emotions were relentless. Fear and excitement overwhelmed Lillian as she approached the capital. How would life unfold in this vast metropolis? Would she be able to adapt in this unfamiliar environment? However, luck smiled upon her when she found a room with a reputable landlady, reasonable rent, and comfortable conditions. Her neighbors turned out to be pleasant and quiet family people, and in this unfamiliar place, serenity and cleanliness prevailed. However, her job search didn't go as smoothly as Lillian had hoped. She had dreamed of being hired as a manager or, at the very least, a secretary in some company. After all, she had graduated with honors and knew she possessed excellent organizational skills. However, reality proved to be much harsher. Almost everywhere, they demanded a higher education degree or at least some specialized training, and a recent high school graduate without work experience was of no interest to anyone. Lillian didn't want to work as a cleaner or a waitress, but her money reserves quickly ran out. Then, one day, Lillian noticed a job advertisement on the door of a local flower shop, sales associate florist wanted. With her lifelong love for flowers, this place seemed perfect to her. She knew how to care for plants properly and enjoyed looking after them. She had read a lot of literature on the subject and immediately decided to visit the provided address to learn more. At first, the stern owner, observing the impressionable young woman, merely snorted and said, "Dear, this is where professionals work, not random passers-by. Our store serves well-known and respected clients, and you need to know how to please them, understand their desires. It's not just about tying 3 roses with a ribbon." Lillian felt hurt, but she pleaded, "Please, give me a chance to try. Give me some task. If I can't handle it, I'll leave on my own. Can't you at least let me try?" Realizing that her home garden was filled with flowers, she couldn't contain her excitement. The homeowner, a woman with a determined character and genuine kindness, began to take an interest in her. She paused for a moment, then said, "All right, let's do it this way, you can handle the next order. It's for a high-status woman, a widow who's lonely. An old school friend, who's secretly in love with her, wants to surprise her with a bouquet. I'm already working on the preparations. I think for a businesswoman like her, ordinary red roses or mono bouquets won't suffice. I would suggest a mixed bouquet of chrysanthemums and orange roses, with delicate cotton branches added in between. I believe this combination will evoke nostalgia for those carefree youthful years and fill her days with a lyrical mood. This bouquet will not only be tender and visually pleasing but also expressive. It's not a complete confession of love, more of a hint. How do you feel about this option?" The landlady, unexpectedly to herself, slightly opened her mouth and nodded with great respect, pointing her index finger in Lily's direction. "Listen, you are truly outstanding. You understood my thoughts perfectly and suggested a beautiful bouquet. I've decided to hire you. However, remember that I expect responsibility and diligent work from you. You won't be complaining about the money," she said. So, Lily became an employee at the flower shop, and this occupation brought her incredible joy. She quickly found common ground with her colleague, Kathleen, and every workday began with enthusiasm and a desire to do everything at the highest level. With each paycheck, Lily set aside a portion to bring her dream of going to university closer and sent another part to her father to help with his treatment. She couldn't act any other way because her parents had always been important to her. They were happy for their daughter and proud of her, knowing that even in the tough conditions of the big city, she never forgot about them. And soon, another unexpected event occurred that turned the girl's life upside down. This happened on a cold evening, when the first frost and strong wind made the streets particularly unwelcoming. Lily was already close to her home when she suddenly discovered a man lying in a puddle. He wasn't moving and showed no signs of life, and the girl was overcome with genuine fear. Kneeling beside him, she began to shake him gently, saying, "Hey, sir, what's wrong with you? What happened? I'm going to call an ambulance right now. How could someone leave you like this?" The stranger opened his eyes, weakly stirred, and, groaning, slowly tried to get up while holding his head. He muttered, "Thank you, no need to call an ambulance. I can manage on my own. I was attacked from behind, hit on the head, and they stole my briefcase, which had my wallet, passport, and work documents. Oh, my head is spinning, and it hurts." Lily stood there, feeling lost, knowing she had to help this young man, who turned out to be her age, dressed expensively, and clearly not homeless. It didn't even cross her mind to leave him in distress and walk away. Instead, she quietly said, "My name is Lily. I live nearby, just across the street in that building. You know what? Let's go to my place. It's not summer out here, and you'll freeze. You can warm up, I'll treat your wound, make some tea, you can spend the night somewhere, sit in the warmth, and get some rest on your way." The young man, introducing himself as James Brooks, a manager in her father's company and a student at the same university, accepted the offer. "Let's use first names, Lily, we're peers after all. Thank you for not passing by. Such kindness is rare nowadays. I'm genuinely grateful." Lily first brought a bathrobe and provided him with the opportunity to change. She tossed his clothes into the washing machine so they could dry on the radiator by morning. Then Lily made tea, quickly prepared some simple sandwiches, and began to tend to the young man's wound. His bravery was evident, despite the visible pain. He graciously accepted her hospitality, and his cheeks blushed slightly with gratitude. A few unruly strands of hair escaped from Lily's thick, long braid, and her huge gray eyes charmed the young man. Her gentle appearance and natural, untouched beauty that hadn't succumbed to artificial interventions didn't fit the current standards, where everything artificial was put on display. At the same time, the girl immediately felt a connection with this young man. The stranger turned out to be polite and modest. His gaze at Lily seemed as if it was delving into her soul. Despite the vast diversity of research tools available, for the first time using her phone, the young man called his parents. He didn't want to worry them and told them that everything was fine, explaining that he had a work-related delay and was staying overnight at a friend's place. Lily carefully prepared the couch for James, and she herself settled on a modest folding bed. The exhausted young man, now warmed up, instantly fell into a deep sleep, but the girl hardly closed her eyes. Her heart was beating faster and her thoughts were racing in different directions. She attentively watched as James slept and couldn't understand why he occupied her thoughts so strongly. Tapping her foot on the floor, she couldn't explain to herself what was happening. Her inner monologue went like this: "What's happening to me? I simply helped someone. Tomorrow, James will leave, and that's it. We'll never meet again. But why has he stayed in my head so much? Why do I like him so much?" By morning, they sat down for breakfast, and James shared his story. He said, "Imagine, I was heading home yesterday, but on the way, I needed to stop by a friend's place and give him something important. I left my car in the parking lot and went through the courtyards to save time. Suddenly, someone called me from behind, asking for a light. I just turned around, and the next moment, everything went dark. Later, I realized they tried to rob me, and I had to run to the police and replace my documents. But don't worry, my dad has connections, and he'll quickly track down those scoundrels. And you, Lily, I want to say a huge thank you for saving my life and not letting me freeze. I don't even know how to put it. I really like you as a person, and overall, you're very beautiful. Maybe we can meet up this weekend. I'd like to invite you on a date. Here's my number, and when I get a new phone, I'll call you right away." That's how their incredible story began, leading them both to something much greater than they could have imagined. As she walked to the door, Lily bid farewell, saying, "Go, James. Thank you. Take care, and it's better to see a doctor to get yourself checked." Those were the parting words at that moment, marking the beginning of their relationship. Their passion ignited quickly and intensely, and Lily forgot all her father's guidance, completely immersed in the whirlwind of feelings that had taken over her. James, her fiancé, took care of her so wonderfully that it not only impressed her but also those around them, including the media. He took her to concerts, cherished her like a flower, and even Lily herself was amazed at how quickly and passionately her feelings had flared up. Night after night, she soared to the heavens of ecstasy, engulfed in this vortex of love. According to James, his sincere declarations of love seemed like a promise of eternal happiness, to which nothing could stand in the way. However, suddenly, everything changed. James's mother, Meg, upon learning about their relationship, erupted in anger. She strongly disliked her future daughter-in-law, whom she considered far below her high standards. Meg had long been eyeing a favorable match for her son in the form of the daughter of a well-known banker, Epifanov. Her open antipathy toward Lily was evident, and she made it clear with her demeanor that this young woman did not meet her standards. Even more hurtful for Lily was the fact that in such moments, James did not defend his fiancée from his mother's attacks. Instead, he tried to change the subject and smooth things over. This deeply offended the young woman, but she tolerated it because she was madly in love with her fiancé. Lily hoped that after their wedding, James's mother would see how caring she was and how much she loved her son, and her attitude towards her would become warmer. However, recently, Lily began experiencing strange symptoms. She felt extremely nauseous in the mornings, had no appetite, and constantly felt drowsy. She began to suspect that she might be pregnant, and it was unclear whether she should be happy about this news or not. After all, James never spoke about his mother, and it was uncertain how she would react to such an event. Lily was lost in her thoughts. What if James refuses to marry me? How will I explain this to my parents? And how can I look them in the eye if my father warned me to be cautious and I didn't heed his advice? I can't delay this. James needs to know the whole truth. I can't wait for the moment when our shared dream becomes a reality. And so, Lily decided to organize an unforgettable surprise. A splendid dinner was prepared, candles cast a mysterious glow, and Lily eagerly awaited her beloved's arrival. James entered the room and couldn't hide his admiration. "Wow, it's so romantic in here. Simply amazing. You've got something on your mind, haven't you? And you look more beautiful and mysterious than ever." Lily took a deep breath, feeling nervous, and began the conversation. "Darling, I have a special surprise for you today. I think you'll like it. I'm pregnant, and soon we'll have a child. It was unexpected for me, but honestly, it's very pleasant. I hope you're happy too and ready to be a caring father. So, we should hurry with the wedding to announce this joyful news. How do you feel?" James, seemingly in confusion, slowly sat down, turned on the room's bright lights, extinguished the candles, and poured himself a glass of wine. He downed it in one piercing sip, emptying the glass completely. Then, he finally said, "What about me? Your surprise was a success. I don't even know what to say. I'm just in shock. It's unbelievable. How did this happen? I thought I was being careful." Silence filled the room like an impending storm, and the tension reached its peak. Lily closely watched her fiancé, trying to decipher his reaction. She silently looked at him, hoping to read his feelings, surprise or disappointment. With a tremor in her voice, she asked, "Are you truly so disheartened? We love each other and we had serious plans for marriage. This is just a bit earlier than we planned. Isn't this a joy for you? Maybe I'm doing something wrong or saying something wrong. Please tell me, how do you feel? Don't stay silent, please." James regained his composure a bit, shook his head, and replied reservedly, "Yes, you're right, Lily. I'm sorry for reacting this way. I just wasn't prepared for this. It's such a responsibility. I thought about my mom, how she will react. Maybe it will take her some time to get used to the idea. But, of course, we will be together, James. You have always been and will remain the only one for me. I also dream of a family, of our future. Do you understand?" Lily smiled and replied, "I understand, dear. But I've prepared your favorite shrimp salad, so let's sit down and celebrate this wonderful occasion." James nodded but then apologized, "I'm sorry, honey, but I can't eat right now. I have an urgent matter I need to attend to. I'll have to leave. I'll call and tell you how it went, I promise." With these words, he left the room, leaving Lily alone and bewildered. For Lily, this was a real shock. James, who didn't want a child, suddenly left so quickly and unexpectedly. She felt confused and puzzled by what was happening. But over the weekend, James suddenly returned, as if nothing had happened, with the same joy and tenderness as before. James passionately kissed his fiancée and excitedly announced, "I talked to my mom, and she agreed. The wedding is on, and everything will be fine. We have a whole month to prepare. There's so much to do, my head is spinning." Filled with joy and happiness, Lily couldn't hold back her tears and rushed to hug and kiss her fiancé. "So, you're the real deal, my best one. I'll be the most loyal and devoted wife to you." James responded to her kisses, and their passion grew even stronger. The couple reconciled, and together they filed their marriage application. Lily enthusiastically started preparing for the wedding. The newlyweds chose a venue, found the perfect wedding dress, rings, a photographer, and an MC for the banquet. All the wedding details came together to create a wonderful event that united them even further. After finishing her workday, Lily decided to share her joyous news with her parents and called her mother, "Mom, I have some important news. I'm getting married to a wonderful guy named James Brooks. His family is well known as successful businessmen. I love him so much. Mom, I'm so happy. Are you happy for me?" Her mother began asking questions about her relationship with James, and then her father took the phone and expressed his opinion, "Sweetie, everything is happening so quickly and unexpectedly. But why doesn't your fiancé come to make a formal proposal? It's the customary way. Tell him to come with you so we could meet, spend some time in a family setting. It's not quite right that the wedding is so close and we know nothing about the groom." Lillian smiled and replied, "Daddy, you are absolutely right. It's not quite right. I'll definitely discuss it with James, and will come to visit you soon." However, her fiancé didn't rush to come and introduce himself to his future in-laws. With each passing day, Lillian became more worried. James continued to be absent, and she began to doubt his sincerity. She felt like he was hiding something and delaying the wedding preparations. Today, on the day they were supposed to leave, Lillian started to contemplate, becoming more anxious. The thought crossed her mind that James had changed his mind, and uncertainty arose about whether they were rushing into marriage and whether they should have met his family. James's mother seemed to openly dislike her, and James himself showed no initiative in introducing her to his relatives. These thoughts troubled her, but she tried to push them away. Lillian wanted to believe that all these doubts were just nerves and that everything would be fine. After all, a perspective of a happy and long life with her beloved and most desired man lay ahead of her. Weeks had passed like a single short day, and now the long-awaited and important day had arrived. Lillian was sitting at her home with her friend Kathleen, waiting for the moment when her fiancé, James, would finally arrive. She was dressed in an elegant wedding dress that shone with bright beauty. Her friend had done a light makeup and a beautiful hairstyle, adorning her hair with fresh flowers, giving the look a touch of delicacy and originality. Lillian's parents had called, saying they were heading directly to the registry office, as her father found it difficult to move around due to his wheelchair. The time was approaching the moment of the civil ceremony, scheduled for 1 o'clock, and it was already exactly 12 o'clock. But James was still not there. Lillian started to feel nervous and worried, looking out the window with anticipation. Kathleen was also in a state of tension and doubt. Where is he? Tell me. We agreed that he would pick me up at 11. It's been an hour. What's going on? Maybe something happened. I'm starting to panic. Aware that something was amiss, her friend suggested, maybe you should try calling him. Let's find out what's happening. Don't torture yourself, there might be an explanation, like traffic or other circumstances. With trembling hands, Lillian tried to call James, but the phone rang for a long time, and no one answered. Lillian felt like she had been struck by lightning. On the seventh call, a voice answered, and it was James's mother, Meg. Lillian suddenly caught her breath and exclaimed, "Hello, Meg. Where's James? We have a wedding in 20 minutes, and he's not here. Something's happened, hasn't it?" Meg's response was so icy that her words froze in the air. "A wedding? What wedding, dear? What are you talking about? My son is marrying Tina right now. They've been dating and preparing for this for a long time. And you, Lillian, were just a fling, a mere distraction for him. So forget this number forever and don't call here again. Is that clear?" Then Meg hung up, leaving Lillian in complete confusion and disappointment. Lillian stood still, holding the trembling phone, tears streaming down her cheeks like an endless rain. Then, without hesitation, she called a taxi, saying, "Kathleen, I can't believe this. It's possible that my mother-in-law is saying all of this on purpose to keep me and James apart. He wouldn't do this. We discussed all the details yesterday, and everything was fine. I'm heading to the registry office right now. After all, we're supposed to have a wedding in an hour. I need to find out the truth. Will you be with me, my friend?" Lillian's voice broke with emotion, and she stared in shock as James and the unknown bride passed by her, not even acknowledging her presence. The newlyweds continued to smile and embrace, while Lillian felt invisible. Lillian was stunned, unable to control her emotions any longer. She shouted, "James, James, how did this happen? Where am I? Who is this woman? Our wedding was supposed to take place here and now, with me, not her. What's going on? This is a nightmare." The guests at the registry office turned to look at the commotion, and the situation became increasingly uncomfortable. Lillian's outburst drew the attention of everyone in the room, and the atmosphere grew tense. James glanced briefly in Lillian's direction, his expression a mix of guilt and unease, before he was led away by his new wife. The registrar tried to intervene and calm the situation, but Lillian was inconsolable. Kathleen stepped forward to support her friend, taking Lillian's hand and leading her out of the registry office, away from the wedding that had just taken place. The heartbreaking truth had become painfully clear, and the world that Lillian knew had come crashing down. Lillian whispered, surveying everyone around, "I understand it all. You're all involved in this. It's evident from your faces. You've all conspired." Caitlin attempted to comfort her friend and softly whispered, "Let's go, Lillian, it's not worth staying here. Regardless of what happened, you won't be able to prove your point right now. Don't lose your dignity. If James decided to marry someone else, it's his choice. Let's go back home and discuss what to do next." Lillian continued to sob, feeling like her world had crumbled, and all her hopes and dreams had shattered. Caitlin persuasively said, "I'm pregnant, Lillian, 13 weeks along. James knew about it. We rushed into the wedding because of this. Think about it, not just about yourself. We'll go back home and talk. You're not alone. I'm with you. Don't let him have power over you. It's his shame, not yours. Don't hate yourself, hate him." Caitlin gently ran her hand down her friend's back, trying to calm her and convince her that life would go on. Lillian whispered again, "I hate him. I hate myself. I think I'll do something to myself. But I won't disgrace myself in front of everyone. Who needs me now?" For the continuation of the story, see the following video. Lillian and Caitlin approached their parents. Their mother looked at Lillian with sympathy, seeing the disheveled and hysterical young woman. Gathering herself, Lillian began to command, "Aitan, don't lower your dignity. You shouldn't chase after him. It's not worth falling in front of him and disgracing yourself. He chose a different path. Let's leave him in the past and move forward. We don't need a son-in-law like him. Let him go his own way. Marinuchka, take us to your home. We'll spend the night there and regroup. Tomorrow morning, we'll see how to proceed. Thank you for being there. Lillian needs to calm down. She's in a terrible state right now. It's essential that mom and the baby are safe. God forbid any complications arise now. That's the last thing we need. After that, Lillian remembered everything as if in a haze. Her mother was saying something, her father was waving his fists and shouting, threatening to give James a hard time. Lillian felt like the world around her was crumbling. Then, there was only darkness. Waking up in the morning in her wedding dress, the girl found herself on the couch in a room, with her parents sleeping on the floor. Her father's wheelchair was nearby, and at that moment, she recalled everything that had happened. Tears started flowing down her cheeks again. Lillian slowly got up, went to the bathroom, shed the cursed wedding dress, and washed herself for a long time, trying to wash away all the insults and filth with which her former fiancé had drenched her. With each passing minute, her determination and anger grew, replacing her confusion and despair. After her shower, Lillian prepared breakfast and coffee, then invited her parents to the table. She said, "I know I acted foolishly and that I'm to blame for this situation. I listened to sweet words and fell into a rich man's trap. I realize my mistakes and understand how much I've embarrassed you. Now, I believe it's up to me to clean up my mess. I won't be going back home, don't even try to persuade me. I have made up my mind, I don't want to face judgmental looks and gossip. I'll earn my own money, stand on my own 2 feet, especially with the baby. We don't need such a father. He's a scoundrel. But I won't seek revenge, even though I wanted to yesterday. Let fate settle the scores. So please leave, I'm okay now. Forgive your wayward daughter, but from now on, I'll manage on my own." Her mother rushed to hug and comfort her like a child, asking how Lillian planned to find work while being pregnant. Lillian replied, "I'll find a good job, Mom. Sastry always needs extra hands, and my baby bump isn't visible yet. I'll have time to save some money. I have some savings I had set aside for university tuition, but it seems that wasn't meant to be. However, those savings will come in handy for both of us, especially the baby. Don't worry, Mom, I'll manage. I have no other choice. I still love you, my little star," Lillian's father gently said, looking her in the eyes. "Just remember that your mother and I will do everything we can, tighten our belts even harder, and stand by you to support you in this difficult moment. We won't abandon you in your time of need. But remember, if it ever gets too tough, you can always come back home at any time, and we'll welcome you with open arms. We're not afraid of gossip, you're our child, and our love for you is unconditional." Lillian gratefully smiled and replied, "Thank you, my dear ones. It means so much when your loved ones understand and support you. And I love you immensely too. I'm deeply ashamed of letting you down like this." From that moment on, a new, responsible life began for Lillian in the world of adults. She knew that she now bore the responsibility for her little son, who had grown inside her. He became a ray of light and the purpose of her life, helping her overcome deception and sorrow. Lillian found a job as a sanitation worker in the surgical department of the hospital. Her duties included not only cleaning the premises, but also caring for patients after surgery. It was challenging and required a great deal of responsibility, but Lillian was naturally kind and compassionate, always ready to express sympathy. She carried out her work with high quality and dedication. Grateful relatives of the patients repeatedly expressed their gratitude to the sanitation worker for her excellent care. The hospital management learned about Lillian's pregnancy when concealing her pregnant belly was no longer possible, and they were willing to make concessions. According to established norms, they granted her maternity leave, promising that after giving birth and having a reliable person to care for the baby, she could return to work, even if it wasn't a full-time position. However, Lillian's childbirth turned out to be incredibly difficult, and she had to literally fight through the pain. The baby was born with a congenital defect, a dislocated left leg. A corrective surgery lay ahead, but its cost proved to be high and the poor sanitation worker had to face financial difficulties. This is how Lillian ended up raising her son alone, loving him more than anything in the world and fighting for his future. She constantly took her child to endless massage sessions and physiotherapy procedures, meticulously performing special exercises in the hope of correcting her baby's leg. All her free time was spent with her son, giving him attention and care. Lillian literally worked double shifts, striving to earn every penny to save up money for the necessary operation. She could not bear the thought that her little boy would remain handicapped for the rest of his life. Her love for her son and her dedication to him completely pushed out all the painful memories of her past romance from her life. Lillian even decided to give her surname to her son and chose the same patronymic as his father so that there would be no reminder of their previous relationship. Her little king grew up intelligent and sharp. He started speaking early, easily learned poems and tongue twisters, and most of all, he loved to run and explore the world around him. However, the baby's leg continued to be a source of concern. Neighborhood boys, as is often the case, did not miss opportunities to tease King, calling him Limpy. This wounded Lillian's heart, and she strongly desired to have the operation so her son could be just like the other children. But she couldn't manage to raise even half of the required sum for the surgery. Despite their boundless love for their grandson, Lillian's grandparents found themselves in a powerless position. They often took King to their home to give Lillian a chance to rest on weekends, but financially assisting with the operation was beyond their means. One day, during her shift, the surgical department received a severely ill patient with a perforated ulcer. Doctors were in a fierce battle to save his life, and they successfully did. However, the patient had no visitors, and Lillian decided to take on that role. She felt sorry for the lonely old man who appeared to be unwanted by anyone. There was much talk about him in the department, with some claiming he was once a well-known businessman, but few believed that story. After all, why would such an important person not be brought to a specialized facility, and instead be brought to a regular hospital? Gradually, the patient began to regain his senses, and he felt deep gratitude toward the kind-hearted and compassionate young sanitation worker who had cared for him. Slowly dispelling the heavy fog of consciousness, he sensed strength returning to him, and Lillian's attention and care became a source of hope and gratitude for him. Their conversation continued as he regained the ability to speak. He introduced himself, saying, "My name is Dustin. I am the owner of 2 major banks in this city. When my daughter Tina took over the management of one of the banks, I decided that she needed to gain experience and stepped back from active involvement in the business. Initially, I tried to help her by passing on my experience and knowledge, but she grew into a true professional and became a successful businesswoman. Furthermore, she married the son of my business partner and became an integral part of our family business." He continued his story. "I had hoped that with a man at the helm, our businesses would become even more successful, but fate had other plans. When I went abroad to visit an old friend, a real tragedy occurred. My daughter Tina was accused of fraud and unjustly sentenced to prison for 3 long years. I am convinced of her innocence, and I believe that my son-in-law's interests are involved in this case, as he seeks to seize all my wealth and business." Dustin's words made Lillian startle. Her expression changed, and she paled as she asked a question that could turn their lives upside down. "Wait, as you said, what is your son-in-law's last name?" "James Brooks," the businessman replied. That surname triggered lightning-fast memories in the young woman's mind. She had never hidden her aversion to this name. Brooks. Yes, that cunning rogue who can quickly recruit and convince anyone, marrying and taking your business seriously. And now, it seems, it's time for you to find out the truth. I am familiar with this family, and I personally know each of its members. She then went on to tell her own story, the betrayal that James had orchestrated, and his marriage to Dustin's daughter. She shared her pain and the heavy fate of her son, who suffered from an ailment. In the end, she confessed, "I hated James and his mother for so long. They treated me so unfairly and shamed me in front of everyone. It would have been more honest for him to say that he didn't want to be with me rather than resort to these machinations. Instead of me, they inserted your daughter into the marriage certificates. I was a fool," I rejoiced, thinking that Meg was making an effort for our wedding, ordering an expensive restaurant, diamond rings, and a white limousine. But it turned out she was preparing for another wedding simultaneously, and they lied to me so skillfully to keep me from suspecting and interfering with their plans. The businessman was shaken by all this information. He began, "I apologize, Lillian. It seems that, as a father, I also bear some responsibility for your suffering. My daughter never told me anything like this. She only mentioned falling in love and planning to get married. I was surprised at how quickly and unexpectedly everything happened. But, perhaps, I shouldn't be surprised, considering that I was robbed and left with no means. When I returned from abroad and saw that my accounts had nothing but zeros and my daughter was in prison, and the leadership of CTK didn't warn me about what was happening, I was horrified. Tina managed the business herself and, it seems, left no room for a return. Due to the stress, I developed a chest ulcer and now I have to be in this hospital. It's a completely shameful situation. The businessman couldn't contain his emotions and covered his face with his hands to hide his tears. He had no idea what had been happening right in front of his eyes. If he had known, he would have undoubtedly prevented his daughter from bringing such misfortune upon herself. Someone tried to console him, saying, "Please, it's important for you to stay calm now, you can't afford to get nervous. Let's go to avoid any exacerbation. Our nerves won't help us right now. Indeed, your daughter might have not remained unaware of our relationship with James and your pregnancy, but she still decided to take this step. Perhaps she believes that everything happened for a reason, and maybe it's truly better for everyone. Otherwise, she would have had to live in this difficult family, and who knows what dangers might have threatened her from James's mother. However, it can be said definitively that your life could not have become even more challenging in this family," she said, trying to support the patient. "Don't worry, you will definitely recover, and I will always be here to take care of you. Tomorrow morning, I'll bring you some steamed cutlets and jelly. You'll be able to give up hospital food soon and regain your strength. Dustin will be discharged very soon too, and he can come back home," his wife reassured him, trying to support her husband. Their farewell was very warm, and the elderly man promised Lillian that she had done an invaluable good deed for him, and when he regains all his rights, he will definitely thank her. "While I'm recovering a bit, we will proceed with the surgery for your son. He needs to regain his ability to walk. Thank you again, you have a kind heart. People like you, whose kindness and compassion are genuine, are hard to find today," the man said and smiled. "Don't worry about my fate," the woman reassured, looking at the comforting businessman. "You already have plenty of responsibilities. You bear a heavy burden on your shoulders to free your daughter from imprisonment and rebuild the devastated business. There's no need to sadden me. The Clarks have always been strong and unwavering. My father, despite his physical weakness, never gave up. He was a true fighter, and I will find the strength in myself to cope." The businessman suddenly stopped as if frozen in place, his face paling, and he asked again, "What is your last name?" Lillian simply nodded and confidently replied, "Yes, that's right. And by any chance, are you familiar with the Eitons?" "Eiton," the businessman murmured mysteriously, his shirt soaked with sweat, and his voice trembled, as if heralding a profound revelation. "This can't be. It's impossible. Lillian, I must tell you a story I've kept a secret for many years. Please, sit down and listen carefully, it's extremely important. Perhaps I'm not doing the right thing by revealing a secret I've hidden for so long. But you're not a child anymore, you've been a mother for a long time, and you have the right to know your roots. All of this happened 25 years ago. I was just taking my first steps in the world of trade. Those times were truly dark: extortion, banditry, anarchy. I had a loyal companion, my closest friend, Kay. Our business dealings were shared, and I trusted him as much as I trusted myself. He was my reliable companion, and suddenly, not too long ago, he had just gotten married. First, they had one daughter, and a couple of years later, another. Life seemed prosperous, and everything was going smoothly. But one gloomy day, an unimaginable tragedy occurred. The business we were involved in was profitable, but Kay was a man of iron will, and he never backed down from anyone. He believed that all threats were not as serious as they seemed, and no scoundrels would dare harm his family. But soon, everything collapsed. There was an irreparable loss. Kay and his wife were involved in a terrible car accident and left this world, while the driver, Eiton Clark, survived but became disabled. He was convinced that the accident was premeditated because a truck intentionally crashed head-on into them on a deserted road. The businessman continued his story. "My faithful comrade's two daughters were left orphans. We had no choice but to place them in an orphanage. You, Lillian, were just a baby at the time, only 6 months old, while Tina was slightly older, about a year. I talked to my wife, and she agreed to take responsibility for raising one of the girls, the older one. She thought it would be less trouble that way. We couldn't have children of our own, and she was happy for the opportunity to take Tina under her caring wings. It turned out that Eiton's wife was a wonderful woman. She worked as a teacher. She sympathized with you, a little girl, and decided to raise you as her own daughter, especially given her inability to have her own children. We decided to keep both of your surnames and patronymics and made it seem as if you were adopted children, so no one would suspect your true story. That's how you grew up separately, Tina with me, and I always considered her my daughter while you became Eiton's daughter. So, you turned out to be sisters by blood. That's our family secret that I've kept hidden all these years." Lillian suddenly shed tears, and a wave of emotions overwhelmed her. What a surprise that my real sister took away my happiness and then ended up in prison. It's hard to grasp, But why, parents, did you keep silent all this time? Is it fair that we knew nothing about each other? Is that humane? And Tina, as I understand, knows nothing either. No, I did not expect this at all. I'm sorry, but I must go. I have to clean the floors. All the best to you. With these words, she left the room. Inside, she was filled with resentment that strangers had made decisions for them, for the sisters, and had concealed the truth about who they really were. Gathering her courage, Lillian left the house and headed to her parents' place in the village for the weekend. She needed to have an honest conversation with them. She was warmly welcomed in her parents' home. Her mother had prepared dinner with care, and King was in her grandfather's arms. Errol couldn't stop praising him for his recent achievements, hugging him, and explaining how to play with his new toy. After dinner, King asked to go outside for a walk, and Barney and his mom joined him. Lillian decided to use this moment to finally express her feelings and ask her mom and dad some questions. When everyone was gathered together, Lillian asked her questions. Mom, Dad, why didn't you ever tell me that I was adopted? Why did Tina and I know nothing about each other? Was it the right decision? Her mother turned pale and clutched her heart, and her father remained silent for a long time, gazing at Lillian. Then he replied, Sweetheart, please, don't worry, calm down. Try to understand us, both me and your mom. We truly raised you as our own child. You have always been our beloved daughter. Lillian continued, but, Dad, don't I have the right to know about my biological parents? Why did you keep this from me? Her father sighed and answered, Dear, I beg you, don't worry, calm down. Try to understand us, both me and your mom. We have always loved you very much and were afraid that if we told you the whole truth, it might have a negative impact on you. We hid it to protect you from pain and troubles. Inspired by a deep insight, her mother continued the conversation. Many years have passed, and times have changed. You and Tina were no longer in danger. But, my dear, do you think we could have simply told you over lunch that you were adopted? Our goal has always been to ensure your happy life, and we tried to love and care for you as if you were our real daughter. We believe that you deserve to grow up in love and harmony. Lillian pondered, her gaze became deeper and her voice more thoughtful. You know, Dad, perhaps you're right. And as for my sister, that's a lot more complicated. I have conflicting feelings towards her. On one hand, I'm glad I have a real sister, it's so exciting and unusual. But on the other hand, she married James, who left me. That's also difficult for me. At this point, her mother intervened, her voice softer and more comforting. Sweetheart, I'm sure Tina is not to blame for what happened. She suffers just as much as you do. Because of your ex-husband, she also suffered. Try to meet, talk heart to heart. After all, every coin has two sides, and each of you has endured your own pain. Find the strength to overcome the past and build your future together. Lillian contemplated her mother's words and agreed, Mom, you're right. Maybe it's worth trying to work things out with Tina. After all, we share the same blood, and perhaps we can understand each other better. So, Lillian and her mother went to the grave of their parents. Lillian shed a few tears, feeling the weight of the lost connection, and realized that she had been wrong to be angry with her dad and mom. They had loved her so selflessly and always did their best for her. She embraced her mother, tears mixing with the rain, and said, Thank you for everything, Mom. I love you and Dad so much. Now I'm ready to try to mend things with Tina. Their investigation became even more intense, and soon it was discovered that the signatures had been expertly forged. This was proven by an independent handwriting analysis. With the new evidence, Tina was released from custody and her criminal record was expunged. But James and his mother became the subjects of a criminal investigation. The businessman devoted all his resources and efforts to restoring his business and his standing in society, but it took nearly half a year, full of trials and struggles, to reclaim his name and reputation. After Tina was released, her father didn't hide the truth and told her everything he knew. Tina was initially in shock, tears flowing like a river. She clutched her head and wished she could turn back time. Why didn't I know about this earlier, Dad? She asked. Lillian must hate me now. I mean, I'm the one who took her fiancé right from under the wedding veil. James told me a completely different story, claimed that Lillian had clung to him, blackmailed him with pregnancy, and forced him to marry her. He even said that Yan wasn't his child. I love you, Dad, but why did I believe those lies? And when I saw Lillian in such a state, she seemed insane, screaming, looking exhausted, and her eyes were full of madness. How could this happen, King? For a long time, Tina couldn't believe that her beloved husband could act so cruelly. How can I apologize to my sister now? How can I explain, Dad? She sobbed, turning to her father. Lillian is so kind, she has such a pure soul, she will surely understand me, and we can reconcile. Maybe we can even go to her tomorrow. It would be a great moment to meet our nephew. During this time, Lillian had contemplated her relationship with her sister Tina countless times. After all, she was her blood relative, and she decided that despite their past grievances, they should mend their relationship. The next day, Lillian was at the playground with her son, King. The child happily played in the sand, shaping various figures when someone called out to her. "Lillian, hello. Look who I brought to visit you. Meet your real sister and my daughter, Tina." The two women approached each other and looked into each other's eyes with confusion and hope. Lillian noticed how similar they were, the same hair, gray eyes, and identical dimpled smiles. All the anger and hatred towards Tina instantly dissolved. Lillian hugged her sister by the shoulders and spoke, overcoming old grievances. "Dad said you have a huge and kind heart. Forgive me, dear sister, I'm so guilty before you. James convinced me that you were crazy, that you were pursuing him and blackmailing him with pregnancy. Instead of meeting you and finding out the truth, I believed him and betrayed you. I thought I was saving our family, but in reality, I betrayed my loved one. It's very shameful. But now everything will change. We are together, and we won't let go of each other for a moment. We've lost too much time being apart. We'll make up for what we missed." King, the observant little boy, noticed the commotion around his mother and left his bucket, hobbling over. "Mom, who are all these aunts and uncles? Are they from work, and why are you crying? Are they hurting you?" Lillian wiped away her tears and smiled at her son. "It's all good, my son. I'm crying tears of happiness. Let me introduce you. This is your real Aunt Tina, and this is Grandpa Eugene. We haven't seen each other for a long time, and we've missed each other a lot, understand?" The little boy extended his hand seriously and greeted Dustin, then expressed his mature thoughts. "Not really, Mom. When I miss my friend Barney, I go visit him and laugh, not cry. Let's go have lunch, I'm so hungry." Everyone couldn't help but laugh, and at that moment, the child made an impression on everyone with his kindness and wisdom, despite his young age. Lillian lifted her son into her arms and introduced him to her family. "This is my little boy, King. He's already 3 years old. He doesn't really want to go to daycare because the kids often tease him about his leg. But don't worry, soon I'll be able to find the means to have an operation for King. He'll be able to play soccer and ride a bicycle like all the other kids." Tina took little King by the hand, and he turned out to be so soft and fluffy. This moment made a deep impression on her. She firmly told her sister, "We won't wait, Lillian. Tomorrow, Dad and I will take you to the best clinic, to the orthopedic surgeon, and arrange for the operation. Don't worry about the money, we won't let the child miss the chance for a normal life. We'll figure out the finances later. For our nephew, nothing is too much, and we shouldn't waste precious time. We need to help the little one before it's too late." Tina kept her promise. Lillian, along with King, visited the clinic, where the orthopedic surgeon assured them that it wasn't too late, and the operation could help the child return to a normal life. The surgery went well, and within a month, little King was taking his first confident steps. His leg was straight, and he was no longer limping. The entire cost of the operation was covered by Tina and her father, for which Lillian was immensely grateful. She was convinced that it would have taken her a long time to save up enough money for this operation. The sisters became inseparable friends. Lillian and King moved to Oslo together, and now they all live together, forming a large and close-knit family. They tried not to think about James, but one day Lillian couldn't help but ask Tina a question. "Tina, tell me, did you really love James? Please, be honest. After all, you dated him for a long time before the wedding. I just want to understand." Tina sighed deeply and replied, "Tina, sooner or later I had to admit that this man lied so skillfully that I even shed a tear and believed him. James seemed like a great guy from a good family, and on paper, he seemed like the perfect husband for me. In the beginning of our relationship, it felt like an adventure. I liked him, but true love came after the wedding. James surrounded me with care, took on a lot of household responsibilities, and I completely trusted him. Everything was so harmonious. He really poured a lot of love into me, and I fully trusted him, seeing him as my lifelong companion. But when I was accused of fraud and publicly arrested, James revealed his true nature. He didn't even look at me, turned away, and whispered, 'It's your fault, you fool.' That's when my illusion of his love shattered. I tried to find even a drop of sympathy in his eyes, but there was only ice and calculation. At the trial where I was being judged, I begged him for help, begged him to hire an experienced lawyer. I naively believed that someone from my firm had set me up. But while sitting in the cell, I realized that I had been living under the same roof with a monster. James initially devised a plan with his mother to use me as a solid investor to cover his debts and make money. He infiltrated our family business, gained my father's trust, and when the timing was right, he struck me right in the heart. All of this was part of their cunning plan, and now I understand the horrifying truth. He was the last person I should have chosen, sis. Please forgive me once again, I've hurt your life so much. It's all my fault. Lillian, who had no knowledge of James and his mother's hidden agendas, sighed and quietly said, "You know, Tina, initially, I also hated both the Ludovs. I was left alone, humiliated, and ruined, and it was so tough. But when my little son was born and I started taking care of him, I realized that it all made sense. My little son became the meaning of my life. And when I learned the whole truth about what James did and how he treated you, and when I found out that you were in prison, suddenly it became clear to me that you saved me. Even if I had stayed with him, we wouldn't have been able to live peacefully. Meg, she wouldn't have allowed that to happen anyway. So it's better this way, with just one child and without him. Yes, let James and Meg stay in the past, sis. The most important thing is that we found each other and now we are together, side by side, and everything else doesn't matter anymore." After recovering, King started attending daycare, and Lillian finally fulfilled her long-standing dream by enrolling in a part-time program at the university. Tina brought her sister into her firm, and Lillian was thrilled about this opportunity. She enthusiastically dove into her work, and soon she was doing quite well. The sisters shared all their secrets and knowledge, constantly sought each other's advice, and together they visited Tina's parents in their village, never forgetting about them. Tina got their father an expensive motorized wheelchair and helped with house renovations. Their relationship grew even stronger, and they found trustworthy and loyal friends in each other. A year later, each of the sisters found happiness. The girls decided to go on a seaside vacation with King, where they met decent young men. Gradually, genuine relationships grew out of friendship and acquaintances, and the sisters decided to have a double wedding on the same day. The entire family circle congratulated the newlyweds and shared in the joy of their daughters, who, after going through many trials and difficulties, had finally found true love. This day became a symbol of a new beginning and happiness for the whole family.